Let us begin this module by discussing the importance of natural resources. The commons is the cultural and natural resources accessible to all inhabitants of a society, which includes natural resources like water and air. These minerals are held in common, not owned privately. Forests are important for the human inhabitants for various benefits like the provision of medicine, food, firewood and water. In accordance with the culture, local communities have long managed and used forests for their livelihood. However, governments have primarily managed forests to respond to the national and international interest for timber. In many cases, forest management has no linkages to the ecological system, the community, economics and politics. This has engendered many problems to the community since it has lacked local people's participation. Participation in forest management means active involvement of individuals, groups and organizations in the whole management process, including receiving information, identifying problems, planning and management, regulation and examination, and solving problems of the forest management. The term participatory or participative forest management signifies the management of forest and natural minerals with full participation of the local community and the involvement of the real stakeholders. The Rio Earth Summit, UNCED 1992 and the World Summit for the Sustainable Development, WSSD 2002 have elaborated on the need for environmental conservation, sustainable development and the alignment of local participation. Subsequently, many countries have implemented strategies to address these concerns. Some of these include the enactment of new legislation, the provision of incentives and the restructuring of forestry sector. New issues in forest management unknown until now in conventional forestry such as participative forestry, community forestry and joint forest management have developed and been included into the forest policies and legislation. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the various environment movements experienced by India, know about what is joint forest management, analyze the SWOT analysis of participative forest management, comprehend about some of the ways in which people's participation can be made effective. Now, we shall look into the major environment movements in India. First is Naxalite movement. It was initiated in the early 60s and was entitled after the village of its origin, Naxalbari in West Bengal state of India. Its major plank is skewed land tenancy, which is the main reason for dissidence of natural resources. It provides poor the access to natural resources by organizing them and acts against the exploitation of the poor by the rich. It believes in the use of force to attain political power and in Maoist, Marxist, Leninist philosophy. The second one is Chipko movement. Chipko movement, initiated in 70s, was a non-violent movement with the objective of protection and preservation of trees and forest from being destroyed. The movement got its name from the word embrace because the people were hugging the trees and protecting them from being felled. Chipko movement found its basis on the Gandhian philosophy of resistance with peace to achieve the goals. It was earlier initiated in 1973 in the Chamoli district and later on it established its root in other parts of the country. There is a very famous story about a girl, Amrita Devi, who sacrificed her life while attempting to save the trees of her village. The local Maharaja of her village wanted to build a palace in the village and for that he ordered his men to cut trees. But when the servants arrived to cut the trees, Amrita and other women of the village tried to save the trees and jumped in front of them and hugged them. She asserted that they will have to cut her first before cutting the trees. The servants were commanded to follow the orders and cut the trees. Amrita Devi died on spot. Before dying, Amrita enchanted, "Sier santhe rukh raheb, to bhi sas to jan." It means that it is only a meager price to be paid if at the cost of my head the tree is saved. The incident encouraged several other rural women to launch such similar movements in different parts of India. It is really surprising that the women of that age were better aware about the significance of forest. Some of the women leaders who asserted for the preservation of forest, whom they call it their maternal mother, were Gaura Devi, Sudesha Devi, Bachni Devi, Dev Suman, Meera Behen, Sarla Behen and Amrita Devi. The Chipko movement obtained impetus under the Sundarlal Bahuguna, an eco-activist who devoted his entire life trying to encourage and educate the villagers to protest against the destruction of the wildlife and the forest and the Himalayan mountain by the government. It was he who petitioned to then Prime Minister of India, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, to ban cutting of trees. He enchanted the slogan, "Ecology is the permanent economy." Another prominent leader of this movement was Mr. Chandi Prasad Bhatt, who defended the progress of small-scale industries operating in the local areas, which were to sustainably use the forest resources for the local benefits. There were many slogans that originated during that period. For example, "Embrace the trees and save them from being felled," "The property of our hills, save them from being looted." Another one says that, "Let us protect and plant the trees, go awaken the villages and drive away the axemen." One of the significant achievements of the Chipko movement was that cutting of trees was banned for 15 years in the forest of Uttar Pradesh in 1980. Consequently, the ban was imposed in Himachal Pradesh, Karnataka, Rajasthan, Bihar, Western Ghats and Vindhyas. All this was done on the orders of then Indian Prime Minister after the firm protest by the activists throughout the country. The third movement is Narmada Bachao Andolan. Narmada Bachao Andolan is among the most significant mass movements initiated in 1985 to deter the construction of a huge dam on the Narmada River. Narmada is India's largest river among all those that flow in the west. It provides auspices to a huge number of people with distinguished culture and tradition. The prospective Narmada Sagar and Sardar Sarovar Dam will affect more than 250,000 people. The major issue is resettlement or rehabilitation of these people. The government plans to construct around 3,000 more small and big dams along the river. It is a multi-crore project that will generate big revenues for the government. The Namada Valley Development Plan is equipped with many promises and challenges. The proponent says that it will generate 1,450 megawatt of electricity and provide drinking water to over 40 million people accessing a number of towns and villages. But the opponents opine that this project will ravage human lives and biodiversity by devastating thousands of acres of agricultural and forest land. At the other instance, it will deprive thousands of people of their livelihood. Led by one of the significant leaders, Medha Patkar, the plan has now taken an image of an international protest. It has been supported by a large number of NGOs from all across the world. Albeit the protesters are agitating in a peaceful manner, police have been harassing, arresting and beating them constantly. The strong agitations throughout the country have also persuaded several prominent celebrities like actor Amir Khan. He has strongly supported the Narmada Bachao Andolan. The fourth movement is the Silent Valley Project. It was a battle of personal issues between the then Prime Minister Morarji Desai, the Kerala's government and the environmentalists. The Silent Valley Hydroelectric Project was enacted to construct a barrage along the Kunthi-Pudza River, engulfing the whole biosphere reserve and devastating its 4 million-year-old rainforest. In 1980, the M.G.K. Menon Committee was set up to review the project. The committee came out with a recommendation to scrap it. The fifth movement is Jungle Bachao Andolan. Most states exist in the bliss of ignorance, observed India Today in March 1982. It was due to this observation that the Jungle Bachao Andolan was born, that began in Bihar and later reached other states like Jharkhand and Orissa. The tribals of Singhbhum district of Bihar led a protest when the government declared to replace the natural sal forest with highly priced teak, a move that was termed a greed game political populism. The sixth movement is Navdanya movement. Activist Vandana Shiva has always taken the authorities hand in hand on the issues of empowering women. She has always supported the anti-globalization protest. Her eco-feminist movement reinstated a farming system centered on engaging women, changing the current system. She founded Navdanya in 1982, an organization encouraging biodiversity preservation and organic farming. The organization has established markets for farmers and has also promoted quality food for the consumers, connecting the seed to the cooked food. The seventh movement is Bodh Gaya Andolan. This was initiated in the 70s with an aim to account for the matter of redistribution of around 3,600 hectares of ceiling surplus area held by Bodh Gaya Mutt. It encouraged tremendous participation and peaceful action. The eighth movement was Ganga Mukti or Liberalization Andolan. The Ganga liberalization movement initiated in early 80s to counter water lot system. Social activists and youth organizations organized the fisher folk and created pressure on the government to bring the necessary legislation to change the exploitative system. The ninth movement was Awards Irrigation System. The irrigation scheme commenced in 1968 established the irrigation structures, introduced equitable water distribution or sharing and management systems through popular participation. These schemes also served as a rallying note for the people. 10th movement is Water Council, that is Pani Panchayat. It's a community-based water council started by Gram Gaurav Parishad, Pune, Maharashtra. People provide for around 1/5 of the scheme's cost and even the landless partake in schemes who sell their water to the needy farmers. People share water on an equitable and per capita basis under non-transferable water pact. 11th movement is Chakriya Vikas Pranali, that is the Cyclic system of development. It is a community-based natural resource management system which aims to bring landless and landholders together through equitable system of income sharing and introducing technological innovations, multi-layered multi-cropping based on symbiosis between different species of plants and crops. The 12th movement is Ralegan Siddhi. It's a very unique instance of participative watershed management and all-round development in Ralegan Siddhi village of partner country Taluka in Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra. This is later presented here in detail. Moving on to discuss the joint forest management in India. Around half of the Indian states have endorsed a policy of joint forest management under which forestry departments and communities jointly monitor forest and share duties and user rights. The idea of JFM originated in the state of West Bengal when a forest officer involved the forest fringe communities in the management of sal forest that had been reduced to bush by overexploitation. The result of the community involvement was a remarkable rejuvenation of the sal forest. Analysis of Landsat images showed that the closest forest area improved from 11 to 20% in the Midnapur district alone. In southern West Bengal, despite continuous population growth in the last 20 years, involvement of people in managing their forest has resulted in many square kilometers of degradable scrub forest being upgraded to open forest category. Encouraged by this success, the Government of India expanded the program during the 1990s. Today, nearly 4,000 km square of degraded forest is managed by more than 3,500 forest protection committees and include 5.5% of the forest area in India, according to Saxena 1999. Under JFM, the legal ownership of land remains with the Government Forest Department. Village committees are co-managers of the forest and are entrusted with the share in the forest product. The local community organizations are proving more effective than the state forest departments in protecting the forest. Rural people now get fiber fodder and fuel and food products from regenerating forest. This improves their livelihoods. The significant points related to JFM are mentioned below. The first one is partnership and regulation between the rural communities and FD, conversing rights and accountabilities in both. The next is the resolutions usually recommend the composition of a village level committee which effectively represent the village, that is gender, caste, etc. The next is, an area is designated for JFM, usually an area of degraded forest, with the consensus of villagers and people from other villages to minimize the conflict. Boundaries should be well defined. The next is, JFM is agreed to be undertaken for a certain period of time, for example 10 years. Next, access controls are defined and users are defined. Next, the forest division and the village share the revenues generated from selling timber produce. The ratio of the share varies between states. The JFM strategy has required a change of attitude from both forest departments and rural communities. Rural communities were required to organize themselves in emerging ways, resolve village and inter-village conflicts, and work together with forestry officials. Foresters have had to communicate with the area people and share decision-making power. To enable this process of participation, the Government of India has supported by providing institutional and legal backing, including land reform, social forestry programs, sharing of user rights with the people, and education of foresters to deal with participatory processes. It has been affirmed that JFM in India is a concept describing divergent experiences ranging from real participation in decision making to mere execution of the government official's order, according to Kumar 2000. Often, forestry officials devise the rules for forest protection committees, and generally the partnership between forest departments and the village communities is unequal, as most power is devoted to the former. Conflict between local groups over land and tenure rights is another challenge in JFM, just as unsolved questions about the legal status of the customary rights in many cases make local forest management difficult in practice. A significant learning from the JFM experience in India has been evolved that participation of local communities in the regulation of forest has culminated into effective forest protection. Another major lesson that has been learned is that sustainable preservation depends on the cooperative attitude of regional people and forestry officials, and significantly on the legal and institutional backing of the state. Let us now understand the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, that is Swots, of participatory forest management. Strengths: forest ecological services, water catchment, rain attraction, fresh air, place for leisure, feeling of empowerment through formation of community groups. We can now make decisions and ask questions. Capacity building has taken place in many disciplines. Now we'll discuss the weaknesses. Lack of unity, lack of transparency among stakeholders in resource sharing, leading to prejudices and uneven distribution of benefits. Ignorance, lack of commitment of members, insufficient knowledge about the management techniques and legal rights. Income from forest products not benefiting the forest itself or the community in large. Human-wildlife conflict unsolved. Lack of funds. Time consumption. HIV/AIDS occurrence affects the implementation of plans. Now we will discuss the opportunities. Larger market for forest products. Unique endemic flora and fauna has attraction for tourism-related businesses. Commercial use of medicinal plants. Access to forest resources, seedlings, resins, medicinal plants and butterfly farms. Increment in food production due to improved soil fertility. Commencement of research center and employment opportunities. Now we will discuss the threats. Unpredictable weather condition. Forest fire outbreaks. Oversupply on the butterfly market sector, endangering competition and blockage. Preservation actions can go wrong due to the lack of management capacities. Thefts. We are insufficiently equipped to fully engage in forest conservation. Next, we shall discuss how to make people's participation more effective. Participation is no guarantee for success. The final outcome depends on additional factors such as the institutional and the legal backing provided by the state. The people's participation is important to the objective of effective preservation and regulation of wildlife and forest. This can be achieved in the following ways. First, joint forest management. Through this, forest authorities and local communities together regulate the forest and share accountability and user rights. Under JVM, the legal ownership of the government's forest department and the local village communities co-manages the forest and are entrusted to share in forest products. This increases people's share in preservation of forest resources. As they depend directly on the forest produce for their livelihood, they would be interested in conserving them so that they continue to reap the benefits out of the forest resources. This evolution has experienced a tremendous success in the field of forest management and preservation ever since its inception in 1990. The second is holding frequent meetings and exchange of information between the local communities and the forest officials. This is important due to the following reasons. First, to exchange information about the progress of forest preservation initiatives and the conditions of forest resources. Second, report of any prohibited activities like smuggling, poaching and cutting of woods. Third, disseminate information and make communities aware about new and improved techniques for the forest conservation. And fourth, briefing of future plans and initiatives. Third is encouragement for people to conserve the resources by providing incentives. Incentives must be given to people who achieve extra success in their preservation efforts. They should be rewarded with money incentives or through permanent jobs for one or more of their family members in the forest department, along with other suitable recognitions in order to increase their enthusiasm and persuade others to do the same. We will now summarize what we have learnt in this module. Participation by local people is essential to any conservation effort. Local people have for many years been considered by policymakers, academics and development workers to be incapable of managing common property resources in a sustainable manner. The community was considered helpless to deter the individual users from deteriorating the resources by over-exploiting them. The external constraints on people's participation in sustainable forest management can be attributed to 7 major factors: the state's authorities, centralized management decision-making, inappropriate attitudes toward local people and forest use, lack of trust and healthy assurance, lack of understanding and dexterity to work with people, non-existence or uncommunicated incentives, and lastly, a lack of legal support. The promotion of people's participation in forest management requires concerted efforts from the government, non-government organizations, academic institutions, the business sector and the people. In the short term, the state should build up incentives so that the people see value and gain some profits from their participation. Limitations and constraints must be amputated by recognizing and utilizing new concepts, including participatory approaches, techniques and methods to manage forest. Fundamental necessities such as assurance of livelihood should be provided by the state. In the long run, forestry reform is highly recommended by the way of revising goals and improving policies, laws and regulations, and definitely revising institutions to implement the new policies. The evolution of parallel institutions to promote forest management to meet various conditions and objectives of the community is recommended. Local people should be encouraged to participate in the development of forest management agreements and forest management plans so that villagers understand their roles and duties in conserving and managing forest. Local participation is an important step to collect and analyze the information leading to the betterment of forest management options that are suitable to their needs. In this respect, participatory action research in community forest management is strongly recommended as a practical tool to build and strengthen the working experience with the community, then leading to the increased participation of the local people. Participative forest management provides basic needs, generates income, and helps to strengthen the capacities of the community in managing forest, natural resources, and environment. Hence, participative forest management contributes to the betterment of human resources in terms of awareness raising, proper attitudes, knowledge, and dexterity through a participatory learning process. This eventually leads to balanced and joint decisions of the central government and the local communities.